All right, welcome everybody to another webinar for the 28 Days of OLLIE. Today's topic is what makes quality online instruction. And we have three experts joining us from Drake University this afternoon. Looking forward to having a conversation with them. And if you have any questions at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and pop them into the chat box or just feel free to ask them as well. We're going to start by doing some introductions of our three guests. We have Dr. Shaeley Beisser, who is a professor of education and online instructor for Drake. We have Shaeley Santiago, who's an adjunct online instructor. And we also have Suzanne Hess, who's a learning management system technology specialist. And so why don't we go ahead and do some introductions of everybody. Just go ahead and start with your name, a little bit of what your position is, and share a little bit about yourself. Sally, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thank you, Josh. My name is Shaeley Beisser. My PhD is in Iowa State, from Iowa State, which did have an emphasis in technology when I graduated from the Center for Teaching and Learning in Technology. My position at Drake is in pedagogy, doctoral studies, and then teaching methods. But one thing that's unique to my position is that I direct an online endorsement program in gifted education. And to date, we have, from 2006, with the inception of the program, fully online coursework that has attracted students from 26 states and 8 countries, so that people in very remote areas are interested in serving the gifted and talented population, but it's hard to find that graduate coursework. The program now is extended to undergraduates who have an interest professionally in serving the gifted population. So with those series of courses, Suzanne Hess has been in support of that, and then Jean Hansen with direction and development of the courses with the expertise of the adjuncts who are experts and gifted.
Good, thank you. Suzanne, why don't we head to you?
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Hess, and I've been working at Drake for about 4 years. I'm the Learning Technology Specialist. I do have my master's actually from Drake University as well. Before that, I was at AIB for 2 years in the director position, and throughout that time, I basically assisted with instructors learning and getting used to blending technology, pedagogy, and content with inside Blackboard, outside of Blackboard, along with Sally and several other instructors, just getting them used to it. So,
okay, thank you. Well, I think we're having a little bit of difficulty with Shaeley's audio. So what we're going to do is we're going to have ask some questions, and when we have Shaeley join us, we'll have her do an intro too. So why don't we start with the question of why did you choose to teach online? What is it that appeals to you about teaching online?
Anybody?
Anybody, go ahead.
This is really interesting because we had a revenue team building meeting in about 2005 to 2006. And one of the needs I felt that was missing in my profession was the overlooked and underserved population of gifted. It's such a narrow population of students, and even more narrowly, preparation or lack of preparation for teachers. And we were at this meeting, and my associate dean now, Catherine Gillespie, said, well, why don't you just teach those classes online? We were trying to look at different ways to fill a need and then, of course, build revenue. And I said, oh, no, I think people would rather do face-to-face. And I remember she quipped, well, if they're so bright, they can just do this all online. And so I thought, all right, just let me at this. And it turned out to be extraordinarily successful because of the very nature of that distributed population. I have people in Japan that are worried about creativity. Really, I have some people in West Virginia who have the same problems as people in inner city Chicago trying to meet the needs of bright kids. And so they learn they're not alone. They learn that there is a support network that is way beyond their geography. So I did it partly because Catherine made me laugh, thinking, all right, they're so smart. They can figure out online. And as a matter of fact, they did.
sounds good. And my experience is with AIB and at Drake, kind of more so at AIB, actually training online. We actually have full online programs and certificates. And so I actually had to, before they were certified to teach online, they had to go through a program that I set up and I managed, with basically walking through a Blackboard course and actually studying up their course. And then I would be inside that course for a couple of years, or 2 weeks to kind of make sure that it flowed and the structure was correct. So that was kind of my role there. And at Drake, I obviously meet. So it's not as many online courses, but I'm able to kind of meet with them to work on getting from face-to-face to blended to online courses. And it is definitely a difference between each one. So it's definitely challenges, pros and cons to that. I always felt a little bit harder I took online courses, so I wanted to make sure that I assisted in getting that structure, the setup, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So I wanted to make sure to help with assisting with online courses. So.
Shaeley, why don't we have you start with an introduction and share a little bit about why you choose to teach online as well.
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect.
Good. Sorry for my technical difficulties earlier. The audio wasn't cooperating. So I'm Shaeley Santiago, adjunct for the Drake School of Ed. In my day job, I teach in Ames Public Schools. ESL is my area. And I've been teaching courses at Drake for several years, and a couple of years back, they asked if I would help develop a new course, Grammar for Teachers, solely online. So in developing that course, we set everything up to be online from the get-go. So that was my first experience with being an instructor online. I've taken a couple online classes myself, though. And then more recently, the face-to-face class that I was teaching, Intro to Teaching English Language Learners, we've converted it from from a face-to-face to completely online. And so that's been an interesting experience to go from 15 weeks of used to face-to-face 3 hours once a week to now all online in an 8-week setup, and how you kind of condense things down and change the format for online. So that's my experience with being an online instructor. Good.
Why don't we talk a little bit about the differences between face-to-face learning and online learning, and how you adapt as an instructor differently face-to-face and online. Anybody go ahead and start. What would you say would be the biggest differences that you notice?
I can start with the front loading of an online class is an exceptional amount of work. Any class, when you begin on day one, is more than a printed syllabus. There is a lot with respect to strategies and how you're going to deliver content and any other vehicles that we'd use to engage students. But online, you can mess up completely if you aren't prepared, if your syllabus isn't clear. If 25 people have unanswered questions, you are in trouble. So one of the things is to have enough thought through that on day one you can launch. And a little bit difference too would be pace. And in my case, some students, because they want this online experience, they are traveling, they are doing other things, they're teaching summer school. We have learned from the literature the face-to-face classes generally are 1 semester long. The typical academic semester is 15 or 16 weeks, but we have learned from the research that if you're teaching a 1-credit class, do not drag it out for 16 weeks. Collapse it into a shorter amount of time. You keep their attention. You have a roving ability for people to take more than one class. A 2-credit class, that's not 16 weeks either. That would be more like a 6 weeks class. And then, believe it or not, a 3-credit class is 8 weeks. People do better if they move quickly and they can do it asynchronously, meaning that we don't have to have class Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 o'clock. They have class when they want class. Not every online class is like that, and some aspects of those differences maybe include some group chats, but I don't do that because sometimes I'm in different time zones with student population. I tend to try and make it as self-pacing as possible, get a lot of feedback. I even call each one of my students, so at least I hear their voices. I don't care where they live. I get on my cell phone and have a conversation with each one. Mm-hmm. So that's different. In my face-to-face, I have conversations all the time. And yet we still have small groups. We still have wikis, blogs, chats, all sorts of ways that they have small group interaction. But it's very different than the face-to-face context.
And I'll piggyback off of what Sally was saying to say that for me, that was the biggest thing I noticed, the difference in building the relationships with students and how you really have to work to do that in an online class because, in a face-to-face, I hear them contributing during discussions and, they get to tell me what they're interested in. In an online format, you have to ask them those things and pull it out of them, or else you don't know. Also having pictures of them. So we do an intro blog and ask them to post a picture and describe something about them. And then you might find out, oh, they have 3 kids, or, that kind of information that they would probably share in face-to-face class, but it helps me feel like I connect with them a little bit more that way. But I think it's just so important to build those connections, because it's that much harder to get to know people in an online environment, and for them to feel like they're part of the class and the community too. So.
And I can just literally piggyback on both of them. It is much easier to gauge face-to-face face-to-face with your class, to check for understanding, being able to organically create a learning environment, and to build those relationships like they mentioned. When you're actually online, you have to kind of build it in and structure it, like Sally mentioned, the prep work beforehand, to be able to be intentional, to put that in there, to be able to make sure that you have an opening icebreaker, to really introduce each other, to connect through an online environment, whether it's a picture, whether you actually do a YouTube video of a discussion board post, video everywhere, something to really truly connect with your fellow classmates and to your teacher itself. I mean, people don't want to raise their hand in class sometimes to ask questions. And so you kind of want Shaeley said, she basically said, you have to force them to talk. You have to force them to ask those questions, to make sure to have those checked for understandings, whether it's a survey, whether it's anonymous. I usually try and like to have a virtual office hours once a week or every other week, just to make that it's an option. Now, I've only had one student or instructor take me up on it, but I want to have that so they have synchronous and asynchronous, and build in. So prep work is making sure that you have all that in there. And it's still knowing that it's an online course. Technology is going to fail sometimes. Things might not go the way you work, but hopefully you'll have confidence in it so that you actually overcome that, and that you're able to learn from your mistakes. You're the instructor, you know your content. You don't know everything. I mean, I always say it, but you know technology, maybe your first time at this, and you just state that. If you give them your expectations, if you state your pros and cons, it kind of helps them be that. And clarity is so important as well. Even if you put in a discussion board and state, I will check it from this time to this time for this date to this date, then they know and they have that expectation. So I think that's definitely that first introduction, that welcoming structure, so they know where students are so they don't get lost, is key.
Why don't you talk a little bit about your growth as an online instructor? Where did you begin? You mentioned a little bit that in some of your bios, but where are you now, and what improvements, what growth have you seen in yourself just through your experiences of teaching online, and what changes had to happen?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm a prepared professor anyway, but I've really learned that the more I can make this a joyful experience for them, where they take my course and it's set up as Jean Hansen sets it up programmatically, that when they take the next online course in our program, that it looks the same. Maybe the buttons may change in terms of what color they are and some of the different functions, but the features of logging in as compatible as possible and as systematic as possible across courses is so important. So, I mean, I really learned that to make it as easy or friendly in terms of use of the student, that's before we even get to the content. So I've really been able to see anything that I can do. Directions have to be crystal clear, and it's helpful if the directions look the same from course to course on how to maybe do your intro blog, as Shaeley said. That really helps. Everybody has that understanding. The other thing I've learned is how powerful words are. I mean, I know that anyway, but words in print, there's no tone to them, but yes, there is. There really is. I have learned to be careful and full of more compliments than I might, because they can't read my voice. They can't until we have one chat. They can't see my face. They don't know if they're approved of. I don't know how to give affirmation other than my words. So I've learned to really try to give them a thumbs up with my comments, typed comments on their work, or interacting on something I learned about them personally, something that they've really taken away from the content of the course. I've realized after the course evals coming in year after year, how powerful your words are, how that helps them.
And I guess for me, the change has been just trying to think of, the face-to-face environment and the kinds of activities I would typically do in class to engage students, and thinking of different ways to bring that into an online context and how to structure activities. And that's especially been the case in this recent class where, I'm used to teaching it face-to-face, and I already have activities and things that I would typically do, and now we're converting that to online. And so, not saying I'm not going to do that activity, but just thinking of, well, what does that look like in an online context? And what are some ways we could still give them the opportunity to interact with each other, to work through this content as a small group and so forth. And so just trying to be aware of my options and always looking for other technology that I can use hand in hand, whether it's social media kinds of things. That's something that I'm interested in exploring more as I go forward, because I certainly don't think I'm all there with it. So.
Okay, it's my turn now. So basically, I know that when I first started to develop an online course, it was kind of flat and one-sided. And through tweaking it one thing at a time, I wanted to put in more videos, actually. So I know that with pharmacy, I worked with them to build a couple of things with flipped classrooms. So inside their course, they had more videos, short 5 to 10, 15-minute videos of instructions with maybe a point question and answer. And then later on, they were able to come together in synchronous, asynchronous, to have a discussion, whether it was a discussion board, whether it was a wiki or blog or a virtual office where they came together in like Zoom or Adobe Connect or somewhere like that, where they can have a physical discussion. So depending on what week it was, they were able to do this. And I think that the activities, trying to, create something where they live, maybe create Facebook so you can pull it in and out of an LMS, I think is key as well. So they can kind of go and get to it wherever they are, whether it's their mobile device or tablet or a laptop, because truly they are 5 minutes, 10 minutes here, because they're maybe not traditional online students, or I guess they're traditional student where they've got a student or they've got a little kid going so they can watch it really quickly here, do 5 minutes here, do 20 minutes here and there. So that's kind of where I've kind of found that really is helpful. But obviously I can say the same thing again, which was what they both said as well. So.
Sure. Well, let's kind of get to a little bit of the heart of our webinar today, and that's focusing on what does good online instruction look like. And I would like each of you to share a bit about, if you could name maybe 3 things or around 3 things of what you think good quality online instruction looks like. And then tell us the flip side too. What would be a poor example of online instruction? So kind of help us see both sides of the spectrum as far as what you feel would be just awesome, excellent quality online instruction. And then what does the opposite look like for us to kind of wrap our minds around that?
I don't know. I just have to go first. So if anybody else wants to jump in.
I'll pop in real quick. I'll go first, basically. I found that we've kind of already touched on this before, but clarity, being very clear and direct, making sure that your instructions and your directions are very clear. That's the number one thing, I think. The second one is structure of the course. If you can't find something, your students are going to be completely lost. So make sure that it's navigation, finding things that they could easily locate. They say after 3 clicks, you've lost the student's interest and they're gone. They've tuned out. Another one is welcoming and being visual, that welcoming environment, because it's that first experience when they open up their course and they see either a video or media or a picture or something, and it's welcoming to them versus just words and text, which goes along with a good icebreaker, a good opening activity. It might be kind of a little childish and funny and humorous, but it kind of breaks the ice, and you're able to connect with people, like you mentioned about knowing the students and having a picture. That's kind of key, because you're starting to build your learning community in that structure, in that format, to beyond, possibly, to make those other connections. I know I took one online course, I think Gene Hansen actually, and Mark Davis was inside there as well, from different schools, obviously. And we both looked at each other inside Canvas thinking, what is going on? They basically took a website that was outside of Canvas, had all the structures, the reading materials, the activities, and just pushed it into Canvas, the LMS. all the links that you would go onto to fill everything out would take you back outside of the LMS and into this other website, this blog or wiki. And we just looked at ourselves like, what? This is so convoluted, so disorganized, so unwelcoming. We were completely lost with going from step A to step B to try and get to the activity, that it was just so confusing for an adult who it was just, I was lost. So unfortunately I did drop out of that online course. So.
3 things that I think are essential. And I think that's a really good question, Josh. One is that you need content delivery that is worthy of the online format. For example, some of my competition also offering gifted and talented courses toward this endorsement will say, oh, we're doing ours all online now. But what we're learning, it is almost merely back and forth via email. There's not a learning management system. It's not systematized. It's not using more sophisticated elements of what good online technologies can present. That means the designer doesn't know. That means the instructor isn't using those because nobody really built that in. Just because it's online, there's so many levels of online. Distance education, for example, could be sending pieces of paper in the mail. So how much more sophisticated can distance education be? Therefore, what we need to do online needs to be worthy of doing it well online, using as many features as could be, in support of the online format in the first place. So that content delivery, using the best of best practices with online, really helps, from wikis to blogs to video clips to narrated PowerPoints to streaming, to students being able to chat with each other, and then have content back and forth, shared content to see each other's work. For example, I've used that as a format. We have a shared exhibit area, so instead of me being the only person that gets to see quality work, they can see each other's good work, so they share final projects. That's one example. So the bad example is calling it online and doing it without sophistication and without really quality design in the first place. The second is assessment. And I think the use of what we have, I'm not always a fan of everything in Blackboard, but one thing I do like is when you can put a rubric there it's right there for them to see, and the assessment and the qualitative comments and a numerical feedback, like where they fit with points or however you set it up. You can set it up with percentages, that the assessment is embedded right there into the course content. I think that's a good feature of good online instruction. And I think the antithesis of that, the bad example, is this is just it's not transparent. People don't really know how they're assessed. And then the other feature I would say is people need help when they need help. And so sometimes that is Sunday night at 10:30 after everything else is done and the due date is midnight, and suddenly they have a technology problem, and tech help is not on the way. The students need help at times that we never know, and sometimes they'll call me for help. Sometimes I can help them. They've called. I'm sure, Suzanne, you've had calls. Jean's had calls. I mean, it's like the middle of the night panic, because that's sometimes when they're doing their work. And just to remember that we have graduate students, and they're definitely not on our campus during the regular business hours that everybody thinks of instructional environment. They're doing their work at a time that tech help is not always available. We're working on that, I would say, don't you think, at Drake? Having extended hours and weekend hours, but that also goes for our instructors. Mm-hmm. They're ready to do something else. Oh no, who's going to help me? So I think tech help is online after all. It's a good that definitely is a plus.
Well, and I can add just a couple things. I think they've taken a lot of the good ones. But I definitely agree that it needs to be something interactive. And so whether that's through chats, the blogs and wikis, the phone call, like Sally was saying, she calls personally. I usually do at least a couple times when they can call in to ask questions, because I think if they're struggling, if they can't figure out the answer, if they don't know what to do next, then that frustration level rises and you've lost them very quickly. Part of that, I think, is the flexibility of when you're available, how you set things up. The deadline is Sunday night at midnight, but that doesn't mean if somebody contacts me and says, I'm having these issues, that, I have to be flexible enough to extend and say, yeah, I realize that's going on, and it's okay if you're going to be late. I won't dock your points and that kind of thing, which is very different than in a face-to-face class, because unless you're like sick in the hospital, probably not getting an extension from me. And then the timely descriptive feedback was another one that I was thinking of too, that you just, because you're not there in person with them, getting their assignments graded, getting comments back to them before they've done 4 or 5 blog posts and they've been doing them all wrong and suddenly it's too late. I think that's an important part of it too, because they only have a limited number of assignments, and 8 weeks flies by really fast. So I think that's another important part of it. And so just the flip, if that is, it's an online class, but you don't know that anybody's out there, you're feel like you're a one-person show doing everything by yourself, isolated, frustrated. That to me is kind of the opposite of what's quality online instruction.
Good. Well, if you're thinking, talking through quality online instruction, if someone's thinking about starting to teach online, what should they do to get started, or what steps could they take to begin that step of either doing blended or fully online teaching? What would you suggest?
I'll go ahead and start first. I believe that really, truly preparation is key. Try and get as much of it built ahead of time and prepared before the first day of the class. I think that will make you feel more confident as an instructor. You need to make sure that you understand the technology, as Sally mentioned, because you will have issues in possibly, and the students will have issues. So you kind of have to be a little bit familiar with the technology, because you want to make sure that you can reach them to build the learning environment, to have active learning, but you need to make sure that you're somewhat confident and comfortable with the technology. Otherwise, it's a lot harder to get through to students when you have barriers, unfortunately, or walls. So I think preparation is key, and also knowing who to contact or resources when something does go wrong, because sometimes it will with technology. And then also, don't try everything at once. I remember reading a blog post of a wonderful, highly decorated, awarded instructor who wanted to do everything all at once, all this new technology, first time ever teaching online. And unfortunately, failure is always an option, and you learn so much from failing. So he learned a lot, and then he actually tried it again. He didn't get discouraged, and he actually eventually did win an award for teaching online. But he learned so much, and he blogged about it, because you want to start slowly with teaching online. Try one new tech thing and see if it works or doesn't work, and then you can kind of tweak it and move on. It saves you time. It saves your stress, your student stress, for the online course. So I definitely think preparation is key. Don't try everything, the new shiny tool or anything else. Make sure to kind of do your preparation, build, create structure, and try slowly doing one thing at a time, and making sure that the support's in place. That's key. So,
Shaeley, you want to go next?
Sure. I would just say, on the one hand, I agree with what Suzanne said, but don't hold yourself back because you don't think you know everything. So you got to get in there and give it a try. I think having a mentor, someone to guide you in the process, is an important step. And for me, Jean Hansen at Drake has been marvelous to walk me through, well, we could do it this way or we could do it that way, and just helping me think through different issues of how to design the course. So if you have someone like that, that can be very helpful to help you move forward in your tools bag.
In addition to what they said, I think it's helpful if you've ever taken a class before you teach a class. Just think of all the people that just embark on teaching a class, but they've never themselves been on the other end. And I think that would be a start. If there is a class that appeals to you and there's a situation where you can be the consumer or audit. And then I would also say read the research. There is plenty of research out there. You don't have to find journals. You can find Google Scholar articles. You can look at strategies for teaching online. You can look at best practice without trying really hard. There are conferences, the Society for Information in Teacher Education Using Technology is called SITE. They have an annual conference. I love going to that. The only thing I don't like is I think I know a little something. I get there, I realize, oh my gosh, these people are amazing. They know everything. But that's the great thing when you go to a conference of experts on using technology in teacher ed. You realize, oh my gosh, I could have done this. I learned that. And you sit in keynotes and breakout sessions. And so just upping your professional level of understanding, I think, is key. And then the mention was made of finding a mentor that Shaeley said every June, my whole team of GT adjuncts has a team meeting. We had to Skype one person in because she's from University of Virginia, but the rest of us are at least in Iowa. They come to Drake and we meet. The instructors meet face-to-face, and we just talk about issues and problems, and sometimes it isn't so much the technology, it's things like policy. What do I do with an incomplete assignment? How do I handle a student that I haven't heard from? What do I do now with undergraduates who have more difficulty accessing students and in the classroom, and et cetera, et cetera. So the team meeting builds our team collaboration. Jean comes, Suzanne comes. I try to have other people drop in that when you teach online, you don't necessarily see how everything else works. The brick and mortar is not there for you, so that they maybe the dean pops in or people who help with registration. We wouldn't have online courses if somebody didn't help in the backdrop of getting students enrolled, getting them an ID, helping them with what you can't walk into an office. You're doing it all on your computer. So they just see the teamwork of people providing a lot of effort. Plus, we have a really good lunch.
That is always a benefit.
And I buy.
Let's head to the final word. If you're thinking about what's one thing or maybe a couple of things that you'd like to leave with today's webinar participants about our topic of quality online instruction, what would it be? So go ahead and share your final word for today.
I'll be last.
Okay, I can start. Mine's kind of simple. I just thought, think outside the box, as in, always looking for what you can do to improve things that, even if you've taught a couple times online, thinking of how you can improve, what new technology you might be able to bring in to piggyback off of what you already have set up. When you're talking about online, you really can build it in so many different ways, and there's so many different options. So it's not like the traditional classroom. So maybe mine should be think outside the classroom walls. That's kind of the concept. Yeah.
I can go next. If you fail, which you might, or stumble a little bit, you as an instructor will learn from this, and you'll improve, and you'll tweak, and you'll get better and better, whether it's clarity or other things. So or activities or interactions, I definitely think when you stumble, you definitely can learn from this and improve.
I think my focus would be what it is with the face-to-face as well, and that's to consider the learner. When I consider the students who are in my class in the face-to-face environment, I'm looking at students at the undergrad level that maybe are working 40 hours, that have campus leadership and fraternity or sorority, or some of my grad students who are commuting and they have 2 or 3 kids, or people who are in a new environment for the first time as a transfer. So I'm always looking into the needs and the heart of the learner. And then consequently, I look into the same needs and heart of the online learners, because they're taking that class online for a real good reason. They're in a rural area of Nebraska. I've had people who were, they wanted to do this, but they have all these life events in the way, everything from a honeymoon to a new job, they're moving. Again, I learned so many reasons that they're taking this class online. And so I'm learning about them and learning at just the absolute needs of the learner. And the other thing, I think we have more and more people who want learning this way. The people who have a little bit of trouble with this are my undergraduates who have never had an online environment because they're just not used to it. And it's almost like out of sight, out of mind when they're taking an online class. It's different, but my graduate population, they are so busy with their professional lives and the personal lives, it becomes very motivationally clear that as a learner, that's they want the efficiency of an online class, and it better be good, or they're not going to pay direct tuition for it. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, Sally, Shaeley, Suzanne, thank you very much for joining us today, for talking a little bit about what good online instruction looks like. Thank you for being willing to share your expertise, and it's been very helpful what you've shared. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. My pleasure.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us for another webinar from the 28 Days of OLLIE. We hope to see you for the next one. Have a great day.